When I used to work in an office, we used to be able to dress up on Halloween. Now, I'm not really the biggest fan of dressing up or wearing costumes or anything like that, but I'm not one to miss an opportunity to be able to dress down at work. So, anytime it was around Halloween, I would always just dress up in jeans and a t shirt and say that I was a slacker. Now, that story has two meanings behind it. First one is Halloween is quickly coming around the corner, and I've already been seeing people carving pumpkins, which, hey, when there's nothing else to do, it's a fun activity and you get some pumpkin seeds out of it. But the other reason that's important is because today we're going to be talking about Slack. Hey everyone, and thanks for joining me today. My name is Matt. And this video today is a suggestion from Michael, so thank you so much for suggesting for me to take a look at this company. As always, if you have any companies you want me to talk about, or if you have any questions about investing topics, please leave that in the comments down below, and I get really excited when I get to research and understand your suggestions. So I'm always happy to take a look, and please just leave that down below. So if you're not familiar with Slack, they are a communication that business uses it's a software that businesses use to communicate with each other. So it's very similar. It combines like an email feature, a video chat feature, a chat feature, and chat rooms all in one platform, and just keeps it all together, which makes it a lot easier to manage the different products or services to communicate with other coworkers or associates. The one-liner for Slack is a new way to communicate with your team. It's faster, better organized, and more secure than email. Right now, they have over 12 million daily active users. Some of those daily active users that you might recognize would be companies like Oracle, Panasonic, Starbucks, and Target. Now, I do feel that it's just important to mention quickly, and we'll discuss this more later, but of those 12 million daily active users, they currently only have 130,000 paid subscription users on a daily basis. So that is a huge difference between 12 million, 130,000. So that might be an area of an opportunity for them, or maybe there's a huge disconnect there, but that's what we're going to talk about a little bit later. They also have different price levels to help you reach your business needs, or depending on the level of service that you need, and it starts off at free, goes up to an enterprise level, which is one of those you have to call and speak with an associate, because I'm sure that gets you kind of more custom pricing depending on how many employees you have. What they do or how they charge these services is it's a monthly charge, and it's based on how many employees are using the service. So it's not per business, it's per how many employees are using this is what you would have to pay. So when I listened to the earnings call, I have to say overall, I really enjoyed what I was hearing, considering the stock is down right now, and just a few key highlights that I noticed from the earnings call. They currently have 87 paid customers that generate over $1 million in revenue for Slack each year. And that is up from 49 last year at this time. So they almost doubled the amount of people that are paying over $1 million a year to use this service. Their total revenue was up this quarter to $215 million. The GAAP gross profit was $187.5 million compared to their give or take $113.9 million year over year. I'm sorry, for last year's second quarter. Their calculated billings was $215 million this year, and that is up 25% year over year. But this is where I think things started to get a little interesting and why the stock might be performing as you would expect. So an increase in calculated billings of 25% is something that gets most people excited. But there are two reasons why this has hindered the performance of the stock and caused it to take a little bit of a dip. The first is that this did miss analyst estimates. So analysts were estimating it was around $232.9 million for these total billings. The average analyst estimate was $232.9 million for these billings, but again, they came short by about $14 million on that. So that was the first factor that influenced this stock price performance. The other is that while they have been growing their daily active user base, both on the paid service as well as for the free service, they have seen a good number of customers that have actually scaled back and maybe downgraded services. Maybe they're at the mid-level and moved down to the just above free level. And they are anticipating that has to do with the virus and everything, with people not going into the office as much, or maybe a lot of employees losing their jobs. And so many people have been scaling back the services that they have with Slack. But I personally anticipate that that is just a short-term fix, and I think that once everything finally gets back to normal, they should see less of that and more people increasing their plans. One thing that I keep seeing with Slack, and this seems to be a reoccurring problem and it makes it kind of hard to follow along with, is if they actually view Microsoft as a direct competitor to Slack. Now, if you want to know my opinion, I'm sure it's not why you came here, but my opinion is that, of course, they're direct competitors. Specifically for Microsoft Teams. Obviously Slack doesn't have an Xbox, so you can't say it's a perfect apples to apples comparison, but I do think Teams and Slack are very similar products, and that does create the competition. And I don't really want to get into the whole if they are or if they aren't competitors. There was like a lawsuit filing in Europe, and the CEO said during like an interview they're not, then said during the earnings call that Microsoft is the biggest competitor. So that's just another thing. Again, I'll leave for you to look up. It's pretty interesting if that's something you would be interested in. And really, I'll just leave that for your own interpretation, because there's no clear answer as to if they view Microsoft as a real competitor. Now, just for sake of this video, though, I do want to assume that they are competitors, because I think that helps just give a better comparison of just how strong Microsoft is, and again, ultimately trying to help you determine if Slack is something worth adding to your portfolio. So earlier, when I said that there's about 12 million daily active Slack users, Microsoft has 75 million daily active Teams users, Microsoft Teams. So that is a huge difference between them, and that's the first thing that stood out to me. But ultimately, I did expect for Microsoft to have a larger customer base, given that Microsoft is kind of that familiar face. People know Microsoft. A lot of people already have it built into their computers, especially if you're using like a PC. I know a lot of businesses that I've worked for have used Microsoft, as well as like all my friends seem to use Microsoft Teams. So that really didn't come as a surprise to me that Microsoft had such a large piece of this pie when it comes to this, inner office communication network systems. I don't know if that's what they're called, that just sounds and feels right. And if you already use Microsoft Office, you do get Teams included. So that's just another incentive for businesses. Now, I'm not sure if you can like upgrade the Teams features or anything along those lines, if you know what I'm saying. But that is, again, just an incentive, as businesses are always trying to reduce the amount of costs to help grow that bottom line. That is just a reason why, personally, if I was running a business, I would go to Teams if I was already using Microsoft, as opposed to them paying for another subscription and adding Slack to my company's resources. Now, I do and should say I have not used Slack before. As I said, I've used Teams before. It was a new thing as I was on my way out leaving my last job, so I don't have too much experience with it. But I know like my girlfriend uses it. I know some of my friends use it, and from what I've heard, everybody seems to really like Microsoft Teams. It makes everything a lot easier, makes it easier to communicate, network, and you don't have to keep formally addressing emails or anything, because you're just chatting with people, which makes it a lot easier. And from what I've heard with Slack, I seem to really get some mixed reviews. But I can say it does seem that there are more negative reviews when it comes to the user interface with Slack than Microsoft has. Now, I should also say, though, I feel that the value proposition that both of these companies offer, specifically focusing for Microsoft on Teams, is very similar. And again, when it comes to brand recognition, overall, I would have to assume that that is where Microsoft has the advantage. But this is a space similarly to like Shopify, how I said that there's space for Square to create their own easy building website. I think that this kind of communication networks thing is another space that does have room for two competitors. Because if you were to eliminate Slack or Microsoft Teams, one of them, whichever one was remaining, would dominate the market. So I'm a big fan of friendly competition. I think that there's a reason why it exists. And so I think that with both of these being around is not detrimental to either of their businesses. Sure, they're going to want to take over the other one's market share, and I'm sure we'll see some competition there. But as the consumer, that is something that you should enjoy, because that's what will help keep your prices and costs low. All right, so let's talk about the stock specifically. And of course, here's where I have to give the disclosure. This isn't financial advice, so please don't take it as financial advice. If you have any questions on this, or if you think you need further assistance, please speak to an advisor. This is all just for your entertainment purposes only, so take everything I say here with a grain of salt. Also, a lot of this is my opinion, so if you do not agree with my opinion, that is totally fine. Finance is very subjective, so if you see things a different way, leave a comment nicely below, and I will happily discuss it with you, so we can kind of each get a better understanding for our own personal viewpoints. And that's conversations I enjoy having, again, as long as we keep it friendly with one another. Now, this will be quick because they are relatively new to the public markets, and again, I don't really typically like to invest in companies that are new. I generally like seeing the 2 years on the market, and I forget exactly how long Slack has been on the market, but I don't think they've been on for a full 2 years yet. But I do have to say, with this being a new company, it has performed very well. They consistently beat analyst estimates when it comes to their earnings. Their short-term assets exceeds both their short-term liabilities and their long-term liabilities, which is something a little bit more on the rare side for a newer company. And as of now, this is kind of, to me, an irrelevant point, but they are trading near their 52-week low. I think their range is between like $15 to $40, give or take, and last I saw they were trading at $26. So if the 52-week high is where they would head back to, there's a lot of room to run there. But I think a lot of things that we've been hearing, and this is what makes it tough, is this an overvalued company? And I'll be honest, I'm really not sure anymore if this is an overvalued company, because it really seems like everything right now is overvalued. And I honestly feel like we're getting to the point now where maybe we need to change how we view something as over or undervalued. Because eventually I do believe that maybe we'll get to the point where, maybe the average PE ratio is 40 times earnings. We don't know that, but using the traditional thought process, you could look at this company like it is overvalued. But again, it makes it hard because they don't actually have earnings yet. They have a price to book ratio, and if that's what you want to look at, they are definitely overvalued. But with these newer companies, again, it makes it really hard to do a valuation for them because they're not earning anything yet, and they really don't have enough data for us to go back on. Now, I don't see this as a bad investment though. And if you're somebody that's optimistic in this stock, then I do think it's one worth considering. Again, if it comes to me personally, and just to be totally honest here, if I were picking between Slack and Microsoft, I would choose Microsoft over Slack. And yeah, a lot of that does have to do with because they aren't a direct apples to apples comparison. So even if I could invest in just Microsoft Teams compared to Slack, I would still choose Microsoft Teams because of how much larger of a user base they have. And again, big fan of Satya Nadella. So that's my thought process. But again, I'm not counting Slack out of the race right now. So with companies like this, and this is what I do during Watchlist Wednesday, maybe I don't think I've explained this enough. So if this is a stock that you are considering investing in, here are the questions that I want you to ask yourself. What are the advantages that Slack has over their competitors? Is this service replaceable with something else, or is this going to be a need and without it, businesses could fail? Do you feel that the leadership is guiding this company in the right direction? And what opportunities do you think they have that could really help accelerate the growth in their business? Now, they've been growing fast, so I use accelerate lightly. But that's how I question these companies whenever I look into them. Sorry about that. My camera card ran out of memory space as I was filming that last, so it kind of cut off my outro. But those are the questions I ask myself when there's not a lot of real data out there about companies, because I think those are like the foundational items that are very important for their future success. And again, you don't have to ask yourself those questions. You might have a different approach, and as they say, different strokes for different folks. So do what works best for you. But that's just, again, how I pick these companies for like Watchlist Wednesday when I do my analysis. So I'll wrap it up there. Again, Slack, definitely not off my radar. It's something that I'll add to my watch list, not Watchlist Wednesday, but it would be something I think worth just keeping an eye on for the future. And again, if you see an opportunity there, then there's no reason to not take advantage of it if it fits in your portfolio and you see the real benefits of it. If you have any questions about that, or if you have any questions about how I kind of came to these analyses, please let me know in the comments section down below. I'll always happily address that for you. If you like this video, I hope that you consider giving it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed already, I just hope that you consider doing so. It's free, so you really should. With all that said, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. You could be anywhere in the world and you're right here with me, and I really appreciate that. But I will let you go ahead, enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow for another Watchlist Wednesday.